coming up on Extraordinary Faith. Travel with us to Miami, where traditional Catholic sacred art, architecture, liturgy, and music is flourishing. We'll drop in on Dogma on Draft and meet the members of Juventutem Miami, a young adult social group that mixes beer and theology. We'll talk with a panel of converts who share their journey to the Catholic faith and traditional liturgy. We'll listen in on a rehearsal of Miami's Latin Mass choir. And we'll visit a Miami seminary where the young men's formation includes exposure to liturgical traditions. Put on your sunglasses and join us on Extraordinary Faith. Hello, I'm Alex Began. Welcome to Extraordinary Faith, a program that travels far and wide to bring you fascinating developments in the world of Catholic tradition. This is our second of 2 episodes coming to you from Miami, Florida, where our focus today is on the young. We'll meet the young adults of Juventutem Miami, who maintain a busy schedule of social gatherings, theological discussions, and Latin Masses. We'll meet some young converts to Catholicism, some of whom were attracted by the classic liturgy. And we'll pay a visit to a Miami seminary where young men are enthusiastically embracing our faith traditions. Get your sunscreen and come along. With us is Aramis Perez, the coordinator of Juventutem Miami, a young adults group that promotes the Tridentine Mass. Now, if memory serves me correctly, the masses that have been held here help to galvanize the foundation of Juventutem Miami.
That's right. So Juventutem is an international federation of young people who are interested in pursuing holiness through the traditions of the Roman Rite of the Church. And once we started organizing, we organized the one-off Mass here in 2012, we thought, why don't we do this every month? Let's bring the Mass to other congregations, let's introduce it to other people and help them encounter the Lord this way. Once we saw that we were doing it on a consistent basis, we're doing the work of a Juventutem chapter. Let's organize and make it consistent, put the name on it, and expand what we're doing.
It's a Friday evening in Miami, and I don't have to tell you that the city has a lot of things to offer. So why is this group of young adults assembled here tonight to talk about theology? To find out, let's ask them. Joining us are
Blanca,
Alejandro,
Jenny,
Frank, Stefano,
Josh,
Vita,
Nicholas,
Andrea,
David,
Lisa.
They comprise Juventutem Miami. Now tonight, something special is going on. Stefano, what's happening?
Well, we got this event, Dogma on Draft, and we're meeting up with a Jesuit friend of ours, a brother, that is going to talk a little bit about theology, a little bit about the faith. And the topic tonight is interesting. It's living faith and lively mind.
Jenny, give us some more details on what's being discussed tonight.
So Brother Mike, especially coming from the Jesuit tradition, is able to speak about the life of the mind, the intellectual life in the context of the Christian faith and the relationship between faith and reason.
Juventutem Miami does a lot of other things too. David, what else does your group do?
Well, besides events like Dogma on Draft, we do many of the activities that you would find in a group of young adults. We get together for special masses. We will get together to pray together. Like recently we prayed at the National Shrine of Our Lady of Charity. We prayed the Rosary. We got a tour of the premises there from the rector.
Does Juventutem integrate with other young adults groups in the Archdiocese? Frank?
Well, many of us come from other parishes. We come together for the traditional Latin Mass, but we maintain relations with the young adults groups that we may have come in from. For example, I came from St. Augustine's, where there's a very large young adults group, and many of us have been through there also, and we maintain lots of friendships with the people from there.
What are some of the things that Juventutem has done for the broader church and for the Archdiocese? Blanca?
Well, Dogma on Draft was first started so that we could bring other people to our group, and they could be introduced to some of the traditions of the church, as well as a chance to fellowship with one another while hearing a priest or another religious speak on topics of theology.
Something else we did recently was that there was, at the end of the Archdiocesan Synod, we sang a traditional Vesper service for a successful completion of it.
How did you end up getting interested in sacred tradition? Nicholas?
For myself personally, I was invited to the Latin Mass, and what really was impactful for me when I first experienced the Latin Mass is I really got a sense of a sacrifice that's taking place in the altar. And I've never even, that notion never really penetrated my mind the way it did at that moment. And from then on, I was hooked, because it kind of pulls you all in. I mean, from the Gregorian chant to just all the solemn, worship that's going on in that. It just was magnificent, and something that has kept me there ever since.
My first traditional Latin Mass was celebrated by the Archbishop, and it was a candle Mass ceremony, then followed by a pontifical solemn High Mass. When I went there, and I was going through my recomings to the Catholic faith, when I realized this is Catholicism at its fullest, and I was just so awed that I've been coming to the traditional Latin Mass ever since.
Lisa, how did tradition come alive in your life?
I was invited by a friend to St. Francis in St. Clair, and ever since I was invited there, I was so on fire with love for God. It touched me in a way that I had never been touched before at any other Mass. All my five senses were touched, and since then I've been going.
Miami is a huge city. How did you all find one another to start this? Vita?
Everyone was mentioning how a friend had invited them or so forth, and I remember when Josh and I converted, we kind of were hunting down a Latin Mass ourselves, and when we first started going regularly, we just, all of a sudden, we had no friends in the Catholic faith. I mean, I was an atheist, he was a Protestant, so we had absolutely none. We were alone in the faith for about a year or so, and then all of a sudden our calendar was just filled with events. We had more friends than we could count on our hands, and it was a wonderful feeling.
Well, you have such a technological presence out there. I'm just in researching your group, I see Juventutem Miami, I see Miamiensis, if I'm pronouncing that right, and just a huge Facebook and web presence. Your mission has a website, and this is all you folks behind all this? Come on, take credit, someone.
I'll take the blame for the website design.
Well, obviously it's an effective outreach in today's age.
Certainly, it's hard to think about putting together a lot of the events that we do and getting invitations to so many people without something like Facebook to do that.
How'd you find the group?
The first Mass that I went to, it was on a Thursday, so I think it's about like half an hour. But I remember the first thing that hit me once I walked in was the music. And just hearing Gregorian chant and hearing sacred music, it just it has an ability to just elevate you, lift you up to the divine. That's something that really, brought me deeper into prayer during Mass.
Do any of you have a particular mentor or somebody who you've looked up to who's led you into the faith?
Our old chaplain, Father Fishwick, certainly didn't bring me into the faith, as I've been a lifelong Catholic, but once I attended the Mass and heard his homily and saw how reverently he celebrated the liturgy, that hooked me right there.
I have the opposite. I had to mentor a priest into learning the Latin Mass. And it's been a little way of a process, and now he's my spiritual director, Monsignor Castaneda, who is also the spiritual director at the seminary here in Miami.
Has the Latin language presented any sort of a barrier to you, Nicholas?
I don't think that the language itself, Latin, has been a barrier at all. I mean, it's such a beautiful language in itself. They call it the angelic tongue, right? But something that it has done has drawn us to want to learn it for the sake that it's the language of our church, and reading the Latin text in its most, authentically is something we'd want to do. So as a group, over the last couple of months, we've actually met a very generous soul from the family of St. Jerome, who teaches Latin.
But I think it would be important to point out that just because you attend the Latin Mass doesn't mean you need to learn Latin fluently by any means. It's not a dead language. However, I tried going to the Latin classes, and it's very difficult. And schedule's conflicted, but despite that, I'm still, or anyone would be able to appreciate the liturgy without even knowing a lick of Latin. Our missals always have both English and Latin on either side, or you can throw the missal down the pew and just embrace the liturgy and have no idea what's going on. Actually, the first time I went to a Latin Mass, I wasn't even Catholic, and it was the most beautiful experience I ever had in my life. So I think that's also important to know.
And I would say that not understanding the language and it being such a beautiful language actually creates a sense of mystery, which I think is an essential part of liturgy and something that we need more of today.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. You were a great group. There are a few sights that one sees at a more traditionally inclined parish that might strike you as unusual. One of those is the tradition of women wearing mantillas, a head covering usually made of lace. So they come in different colors, I can see already.
My favorite is my black one, but we sometimes get worried about what people assume wearing a black veil means. Blanca read, what did you read recently on a blog?
Apparently black veils were for married women and white veils were for single women.
I thought black veils were for widowed women, but I just like my black veil better, so I wear it when it matches my outfit. I carry 2 colors on me at all times.
You're breaking tradition with tradition.
Yes, absolutely.
Although when people visit the Pope, women wear black veils.
Oh, really?
They're supposed to wear black veils.
Blanca would
unless
know.
you're a Catholic monarch, then you wear a white veil, so.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know
there
that.
You go.
There you go. Yeah.
How do you keep them fastened to your hair?
Well, all of ours are just placed on our heads, and it
depends on the material too, if it's slippery or not.
That's why it's important to buy one with good quality. It's kind of good to pay a little bit more than what you might, because if it's a better material, it sits better. But people can also purchase veils that have combs built in.
Or just bobby pins.
Or a bobby pin, yeah, bobby pins.
Any other fashion tips for our viewers?
Well, I would tell young ladies that you don't really have to worry about the veil slipping off. Once it's on, it sits there. Unless you're married and you have multiple children, that's where I hear women complaining that the mantilla keeps falling off, and that's where a comb or bobby pins would come in hand. But once it's on, it becomes like second skin. It becomes really natural.
Ladies, thank you so much for enlightening us. Considering all of the forces that compete for our attention in modern society, it's a remarkable commitment when people choose to convert to the Catholic faith from other religions, or even from no religion at all. What's even more interesting is that an increasing number of converts are finding spiritual solace in the world of the traditional Latin Mass. Joining us today are Nick Facilione, Vita Tavacoli, and Joshua Hernandez. Vita, let's start with you. I understand you were an atheist.
Yes, my family immigrated to this country from Iran. When Iran was undergoing the Islamic Revolution, I wasn't really particularly raised with any faith. My family's not a Muslim, and I was raised in a very secular environment. So it was a journey for me. Josh and I met when I was an atheist, and Josh was a Protestant. It's hard for me to talk about my conversion because they're so intertwined. But when we met, it was love at first sight, but we had these obstacles because we didn't practice the same religion, and we would argue a lot. And my family thinks he brainwashed me, but really, if they know my personality, I was pretty hard-headed, and we'd go back and forth, and he would send me, we were long distance at first, and he would send me literature, and he would send me Chesterton, who I love now, but all this philosophy and theology, and I just wouldn't even look at it. And it was not until he sent me C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy where my imagination opened up to the existence of God. And it's kind of funny that sci-fi is what converted me. And then from there, it was a journey. From there, we decided to travel, and we went and did the El Camino de Santiago, the Road to St. James, which is a really popular pilgrimage from medieval times that starts in southern France and goes all the way through Spain to Compostela, where the ruins of St. James are. And it was on the Camino that I decided to become Catholic.
It turns out after the Camino, we had to fly back from London, and we decided, on our way back, we had a couple spare days, so we decided to go to Oxford.
We wanted to give homage to Tolkien
and Lewis, exactly. So we found a hostel there. We stayed there a couple days, And I found out somehow at the oratory there were, you know, they celebrate the Latin Mass. I kept hearing about this Latin Mass thing. I was really curious, you know, what is this? You know, I wanted to check it out. So I can't even put into words. It was a solemn high Mass in Latin, and from the very moment I stepped foot in there, I was literally just brought to my knees.
Somehow this ritual you observed appealed to you. You overcame your resistance to ritual?
At this point, you know, I was pretty convinced of the Eucharist. You know, I at least wanted it to be true, and I did have developing a certain hunger for it. And one thing that I saw was, you know, whether it's true or not, everybody's acting like it is. Everybody's acting like our Lord is truly present, body, soul, blood and divinity right there on the altar. And that, I mean, that did me in. It was at that moment that I mean, that was it for me. My last resistance was
Yeah, that was the moment you converted. When I experienced it, I had no idea what we were getting into, and it was the most beautiful experience I'd ever had in my life. I didn't know where the music was coming from, you know, because in the Latin Mass, we sang in the choir loft, and a lot of times people think that, oh, we're trying to hide away the singers, we don't want to see them, when really we're trying to resemble perhaps how the angels would sing from on high, something otherworldly happening, something mystical, and it really felt that way. I really felt like I was sitting on a bed of clouds and angels were singing above my ears, and I'll never forget that Mass and that moment. We were really spoiled to come into the church this way.
Nick, I understand you're a revert. You fell away from the Catholic faith and then came back.
Well, I came back to the faith in my early 30s. It happened during my second semester of law school. And at that time, I started, you know, praying again for the first time probably since I was a boy. And I knew that I, you know, was a believer, and I knew that I believed in God and that I believed in Jesus Christ. But a couple of questions that kept going through my mind were, which church, you know, should I join? At the time, by the way, I grew up in New York, but at the time that this happened, I was living in the Oklahoma City area. I wound up in Oklahoma City because of military service. So I had been exposed to a lot of evangelical and fundamentalist type preaching, which was all over the television in Oklahoma and in most of the country. So the question in my mind was, which church, you know, should I join at this point, or should I even, you know, join a formal institutional church? Should I just get my Bible and read my Bible and do that? And I had a law school professor who turned into a mentor and is now a good friend, he provided me guidance throughout this entire year of law school. And after some really long and in-depth conversations with him, I was convinced that I was going to go back to the Catholic Church, and I've been, you know, solidly in the church since that moment.
Joshua, Vita, Nick, thank you so much for sharing your personal testimonies.
Thank you, Alex.
One of the driving forces behind the restoration of tradition here in Miami is someone we featured before on Extraordinary Faith, Dr. Jennifer Donaldson. Jenny, you've been involved for a few years here with the Latin Mass community in Miami. What sort of things have you been able to do to build the sense of community there?
The members of our community are very devoted, of course, to the Rosary and other traditional devotions, especially devotions from different areas in Latin America. It's really beautiful. Some of the churches here in Miami, you go and you see tons of different pictures of Our Lady under different patronages that reflect each of the countries that people in Miami are from. Also, there's a strong interest in the traditional office, and so we are increasing the opportunity for people to attend the Compline, for example, or Vespers. Also, people have a very strong sense of the sacrament of penance, and the confession lines are always way longer than the priests have time for, and It's kind of funny, even though our community is a small part of the life of the Archdiocese of Miami, whenever you go to another parish, it invariably happens that you see someone else from the Latin Mass community standing in line for confession at various parishes around the city.
Jenny also was kind enough to invite us to record her choir's rehearsal the other night. Let's take a peek. While we're here in Miami, we were fortunate to be invited to stop in at St. John Vianney College Seminary, one of the 2 seminaries servicing this part of Florida. We're joined by 4 seminarians. Gentlemen, introduce yourselves.
Hello, my name is Argenis Peralta. I'm from the Diocese of Venice in Florida.
My name is Matthew Hawkins. I'm from the Diocese of Orlando, Florida.
My name is Ryan Gaston, and I'm also from the Diocese of Venice in Florida.
My name is Derek Saldana, and I'm from the Diocese of Orlando in Florida.
Ryan, I understand that the seminary has given its students an opportunity to attend 1 or 2 extraordinary form masses.
Last summer, I was blessed to have a parish that was very close to my summer assignment, and I had the opportunity to go there every Monday for the low mass, and they taught me how to serve, and learning how to serve. The low mass touched me very much because being so close to the mass itself, being so close to the priest and facing the same way that the priest did as all the prayers were said, it helped me get a stronger connection and a tie to the priesthood there. And that's Christ the King in Sarasota, run by the Fraternity of St. Peter. And here at the seminary this past year, we were blessed to have a Latin Mass here on the Feast of All Saints Day, which was very beautiful and was well attended by the seminarians and people from outside the community. And in particular with the Diocese of Venice, oftentimes when we get together to pray night prayer together, we'll chant it in the Old Latin.
I'd like to get your thoughts on how your experience of sacred art and sacred music and architecture and so forth has affected you, both before you entered the seminary and now that you have your vocations.
Growing up in India, the priesthood has a very social dimension to it. So a priest spends a lot of time in reaching out to the poor, serving people in the community quite literally. But when I came to the United States, I was at Franciscan University in Steubenville. And over there, I saw the sacramental aspect of the priesthood. And I learned that the Eucharist, is something so important and the real core of our faith. And the liturgy, enhances the Eucharist. And I would say it brings out the beauty of the Holy of Holies of our Christian faith. Whenever I attend adoration, and when I hear Gregorian chant, or even when I hear the Tantum Ergo, it feels like heaven, because we are really there in the presence of our Lord, and the music, and even I've seen monstrances which have like angels on both ends. I think that really adds to the beauty of Christ's real presence in the Eucharist.
I guess probably my introduction to just the beauty of the liturgy and just the beauty of our faith in general probably came at a very early age. I received the sacraments in the Orthodox Church, which has a very great love for beauty of art and iconography, the beauty of their churches with the iconostasis, the beauty of their liturgy, which dates back probably to the earliest centuries of the church. And so very much it's a part of their faith. It's not something added on, it's not something in the periphery, but it's very much something that is in the root of what people believe. And I think it's that beauty which draws people to the church. Now in the West, we incorporate that same sense of beauty together with the philosophical and the deep traditions, the rich traditions with Thomas Aquinas, and with more of a systematic theology. And so we come together with this faith and reason in the West, which I think is very accessible to people, especially nowadays with a more intellectual people who are asking those deep questions, wanting answers, but at the same time relying on the heart to be attracted towards beauty and towards the richness of our faith, truth and love and goodness and all those things which even the young people are really wanting in their faith and in their lives, which is not being responded to in the secular world.
You don't see too much about beauty and liturgy and all those things, especially in my small town. But thanks to I was able to join the choir at my high school, and it was through that we were able to sing sacred music, and the music really touched my heart there, and it's so true. The beauty of the sacred music brought my mind and my heart towards heavenly things, toward the transcendent, which brought me to wonder about my life, which brought me to wonder about the end of all things, and that's what really attracted me to a Christian life and to a life with the church, which provides so much different venues for sacred music, and which continues to evolve even to this day.
And for me, one of the highlights of the week is when we have our weekly adoration and holy hour, and I play the organ for the Tantum Ergo and the O Salutaris, and the organs is facing the people, or is perpendicular to the people. So when I play, I can look up and I can see the people, and then I look to my right and I see our altar servers and the cassock and surplice and the incense and the candles, and it's really a transcendent moment because 2 or 3 hours from later after that we'll be off studying or off doing things in the regular modern world, but in that moment this is what St. Thomas Aquinas and all other great saints, their seminaries, their houses of formations would have probably looked and felt so similar. So it's just a great connection with the past. And even since before I entered seminary, I always had a great love for St. Thomas Aquinas, and it was going to be a good part of my further and extra study here at St. John Vianney. Even created an independent study with him, with one of the professors here, and how that the truth that we learn from the philosophical sequence from Socrates and Aristotle and Plato and all these different philosophers, that when you live them and you accept them into your life and it fills you in every moment of your day, that truth that you read in an old textbook that was written in Latin or Greek, that truth actually becomes beauty in a very real and tangible way. And I've seen people see it. When people see truth, when they see someone that's living a true and authentic Catholic faith, they see that there's something beautiful there, and then they see that beauty, that truth, that peace that person has, I want that too. And I think for me, that's one of the most powerful ways of the new evangelization.
Gentlemen, thank you for helping our viewers appreciate that tradition is a living thing today. On our next episode, we'll tour new churches in California and Wisconsin that are setting a trend by being built in a traditional style. We'll meet Duncan Stroik, one of the most prominent architects behind the resurgence of classic church designs. And we'll pay a visit to Dr. Dennis McNamara, a member of the faculty at Chicago's Mundelein Seminary who has literally written the book on good church architecture. Build some space into your schedule for the next Extraordinary Faith. You can read more about every place we explore on our website, extraordinaryfaith.tv. We also invite you to like us on Facebook, where you can leave us comments or questions. Thanks for traveling with us to Miami, and join us on our next episode as we continue to celebrate our wonderful Catholic traditions here on Extraordinary Faith.